I get the Darwin Núñez signing. You know, they wanted a striker like him. They were very impressed with him when they faced him in the Champions League with Benfica. I get it. He's young. I think they've overpaid. And my theory is that Julian Ward, who was taking over Michael Edwards as the sporting director, almost wanted... This summer was very important for him because it was his first one as the number one. And I think he wanted to make a statement in a way. Yeah. And because he worked at Benfica before, he knew them well. He went in. At that time, the situation was a bit of a kind of a deadlock. He went in and fair play to him, made the deal happen. All great. Everybody was praising him. Darwin this, Darwin that. No problem. I think they overpaid. But maybe that was always going to be the case. But more importantly, I think some of that money that they spent on Darwin, that maybe they could have spent on another striker, or maybe could have gone Darwin for less money, I don't know, could have been very useful on the midfielder. There was a point where they were looking at Tchouaméni, where they were looking at Bissouma from Brighton. That only cost 25 million. They didn't have that money then because the 100 million went on to Darwin. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely, because if you look at their midfield, that's still... They needed a centre forward. There's no question about that. Firmino's not the player he was 2 or 3 years ago, and he's not so effective. And we see
that now that he plays.
Yeah, and he's not as effective anymore. The midfield with Milner and Henderson, you know, they've both done a great job for Liverpool. Henderson, you know, is a good leader and he does a lot of good things, but he's not the talent of some of the top midfield players in the Premier League. Milner, you know, has been a great workman for the side, and he's a good player. He can do both sides of the game, but he's still not going to be the tops. He can play with other players that have got great skill, like Thiago. When he's playing at his best, he controls the midfield with his passing, and the other players can work around it. When Thiago's not playing, then there's got a problem. Who's going to be the creative player? You know, who's going to be the one that's going to pick out those exceptional passes? Who's going to be the one that's going to play around pressure and get away from challenges? That's when Liverpool have got a problem. So that's maybe where the money could have been spent wiser.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think James Milner can start a game like the one against United on Monday night. I think he can do a good job for the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe play in some of the domestic cups. But I was amazed that he started that game. I don't know if Fabinho was not well. I didn't think there was a problem with Fabinho, but to put Fabinho on the bench for a game like this, and very early on when you saw that they were playing, like United were playing long balls and you had to be strong on the second balls, and no one from Liverpool were winning them, and Fabinho is sat on your bench, I'm like come on. But I do think that in midfield, there's a problem that they can only now address between now and the end of the transfer window. But again, I don't think there's money left. Or maybe in January. But Naby Keita, not sure what's happening.
He obviously doesn't fancy him that much. He thinks he's a decent player, but he's not a player that he can rely on week in, week out, and he's not one that he wants to play. So, Naby Keita, I think, would be better off for himself. At some
such
point.
A shame, though,
because when he came, having seen him play in the Bundesliga, he looked like a magnificent player. He could do everything he wanted of a midfield player.
Completely.
But he hasn't had that at Liverpool, and I think his confidence has been knocked. He doesn't feel as though he's one of the top players at Liverpool because he doesn't get picked every week. So his confidence has gone, and he's not the player he was when he was playing in the Bundesliga.
And then there's Harvey Elliott, who has a lot of talent, who was a winger before that club. He's kind of making into a midfielder, which I think is not a bad idea. But again, he's not ready for those kind of battles like the one we saw at Old Trafford, for this kind of games.
He's a talented player.
Yeah, but especially with Milner and Henderson next to him. I mean, I think that midfield three was the less sort of compatible, complementary than the one they could have made. And it shows, again, when you look at Liverpool's bench on Monday, it's not the kind of bench that a club like Liverpool should have for a game like this.
No, absolutely not. And I think they probably underestimated how Manchester United were going to play and what sort of spirit they were going to have. I think everybody thought that Manchester United, having seen the first two games, the crowd baying for blood outside the ground, that Manchester United were going to be a nervous side. Well, they got their tactics absolutely right.
They did.
And Klopp didn't get his tactics right, or didn't adjust to what Manchester United were doing. And you have to say that about the defenders as well. They must have seen how Manchester United were going to play and kept hitting balls in behind them. Why didn't they adjust and drop off rather than gamble on playing offside? I
agree with you. I think, just to go back on Klopp quickly in that seventh season syndrome, I don't think, I'm like you, I think Liverpool will come good and will finish top two like we expect them to be. But it'd be very interesting to see what he does to stop this rot. I mean, it's Bournemouth at home this weekend, so if they don't win that, I mean, and if we see the same issues again defensively, in the lack of intensity, if Salah again is he's not really into the game, like he wasn't against Fulham, like he wasn't against Palace, like he wasn't really against United. No. I know he scored against Fulham and there was the assist. He scored against United, but this is not the Mo Salah that, with the new contract, we expected him to be and carry the team.
You're not telling me he's going to be an Aubameyang.
No, I don't want him to be, and he's a bit younger, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
But did we underestimate the loss of Sadio Mane?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all done that. We all thought that, we talked about Salah and they had to sign him, and, if they're going to lose one player, Mane was probably the best player at realising when the ball was changing hands. He did a lot of work defensively. He half came back, ready to challenge the fullback or the wide centre-half who was coming forward. But as soon as Liverpool won the ball back, he would sprint for the first 15 yards. And how many balls did they knock over the top for him to run onto, playing that percentage football? He was a great counter-attacking player. He epitomised everything that Liverpool were about and what Klopp's about. So he's a massive loss. Diaz, yes, is a great talent and he's settled in really well, but he's going to be a player that's going to come short and get on the ball and then run with it and do different things. Jota is more like Mane with his movement in terms of trying to run in behind the opposition, and it's a shame for Liverpool that he's injured, so they can't change things.
No, and injuries, I think, as we said earlier, is part of the problem and part of the solution. Once you get back Matip and Konate and you've got more depth defensively to do what you want, we will talk about training a bit because I can see your eyes already. Once Thiago Alcantara comes back in midfield, for example, and maybe Naby Keita and everybody is fit or nearly fit, then you've got more options too. And then up front, I think this team, we all love Bobby Firmino and did a great job, and he was such a different type of forward and striker that we all love watching him play, but he's getting older and clearly has less rhythm and intensity in his game and is less influent, really.
Whenever you're previewing a game that Liverpool are playing in and have done over the last 5 whatever years, you would say, I'm not sure the opposition can cope with their intensity. I'm not sure the opposition can play around their pressure. I'm not sure the opposition are going to be able to cope with the runs of Salah and Mane. When you look at these first 3 games, they have been able to. And there hasn't been that level of athleticism that we've seen from Liverpool in the past.
And I think Mane is a pressing machine. And I think of all the front 3, whether it was with Jota and Salah, or with Diaz and Salah when he was playing centrally, or even Firmino and Salah, I think he was the one really that triggered the press, that was the most aggressive in the press, that was the more efficient in the press, and losing him. Diaz can run a lot and, all of that, but doing a press efficiently takes a lot of thinking and a lot of practicing, and I don't think Diaz is at that level yet.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.